The air was thick with two things: mesquite smoke and my father's voice. Hundreds of people, cops, politicians, half of Dallas, it felt like, were crowded into our backyard, hanging on his every word. This was it. Chief Frank's hero's send-off. The 20th anniversary of the day he supposedly became a god. I was in the front row, my face locked in a smile so tight my cheeks were aching. Next to me, my boyfriend Noah sat perfectly still. His hand wasn't on my leg. It was resting on the simple wooden head of his cane. My father, Frank, was on the small makeshift stage, his face flushed with sun and self-importance. He raised his glass and boomed into the microphone. "I gotta thank my daughter, Sarah." The crowd made polite, warm awe sounds. "She's a nurse, God bless her," he continued. "She's got that soft heart. The kind I tried to toughen up, but it never took." The crowd laughed, a friendly, knowing laugh. It felt like needles on my skin. This was his favorite joke. The tough cop and his softy daughter. I clapped right on cue, but inside I wanted to scream, "I'm a trauma nurse, Dad. I'm the one who patches up the people you cops break. There's nothing soft about me." But I just clapped. Be the proud daughter. Don't show them how much it stings. But he wasn't done. Oh no. He was on a roll, laughing as he said, "She just loves bringing home broken things." My stomach dropped. I knew where this was going. His gaze shifted from me to Noah, right next to me. "She's outdone herself this time," he said. "She even found this fragile fella." A few confused titters came from the crowd. This was off script. He gestured not at Noah, but at Noah's cane. Then, with a fake, fatherly grin, he said, "Son, in my world, the weak get left behind. It's how the strong survive." The laughter this time was bigger, louder. It hit me like a physical shove. I could feel the heat rising in my chest, a fire of pure, unadulterated humiliation. I wanted to stand up and throw my glass at his smug, grinning face. Instead, I did what I'd always done. I sat there. I took it. I even forced a nod like I was in on the joke. I glanced at Noah. His face was a blank mask. He wasn't looking at my father. He was staring at the ground. I felt a wave of shame so deep I thought I'd drown in it. My father raised his glass for the final toast. "To strength," he yelled. And that's when it happened. There was a single sharp thud. Noah stood up. The thud was his cane hitting the wooden stage. He hadn't just stood up, he had walked, and was now standing right next to my father. The music cut out. The laughter died. Every eye in that backyard was on him. My father's smile, for the first time in my life, wasn't a smile. It was a snarl. This was the moment my entire life cracked in two. The moment my father, the hero, was exposed as a monster, and the fragile man he mocked became the one holding the hammer. But to understand why this moment didn't just break our family, but obliterated it, you have to go back 3 weeks, to the first time my father laid eyes on Noah, and I mistook his fear for simple hatred. 3 weeks earlier, it was a Sunday, one of our mandatory family BBQs. My father, Frank, was in his element, flip-flops on, apron tied, holding court by the grill. In my family, Frank wasn't just the man of the house, he was the sun. A big, loud, blazing sun that everyone was forced to orbit. I had been dating Noah for 2 months, and it was time. I brought him over, my hand probably squeezing his a little too tight. "Dad," I said, "this is Noah." The whole yard seemed to pause. Frank turned, his eyes doing a quick, dismissive scan. They went from Noah's face down his body and lingered just for a second on the cane. "So," Frank said, wiping his hand on his apron, "this is him." He stuck his hand out, and his voice was full of that fake politician's charm. "Noah, good on you for getting out of the house. Takes guts." He winked at me as if to say, "Look how nice I'm being to your charity case." That was his gift, the weaponized compliment, the insult hidden inside a handshake. I felt Noah's hand tense, but his voice was perfectly even. "Thanks, Frank. Nice to meet you." But my mother, Clara, she was the real expert in our family dynamic. She saw the tension, the way Frank was sizing Noah up, and she did what she always did. She flinched, looked away, and immediately started scrubbing a non-existent spot on the kitchen window. "Sarah, honey," she called, her voice high and tight. "Do we have more ketchup?" That was our family's one unbreakable rule. If Dad is on the verge of being cruel, you don't confront him. You change the subject. You look away. My mother taught me that silence, that inherited silence, was the only way to keep the peace. So I smiled, nodded, and went to get the ketchup, leaving Noah alone with the wolf. By the way, I have to ask, have you ever had a family member just like that? Someone who disguises their deepest insults as advice or just a joke? If you have, please like this video and tell me in the comments what they said to you. I just want to know I'm not alone in this. That first meeting set the tone for the next 2 weeks. Frank would throw these casual, cruel little darts, and Noah would just take them. I kept telling myself Dad was just being protective, but that kitchen conversation proved it was something else, something darker. Then, at the next Sunday BBQ, Frank gathered everyone on the patio. He clinked a beer bottle with a spoon, his chest puffed out. "All right, everybody, listen up," he boomed. "I've got an announcement. After 30 years on the force, I'm hanging up my hat." A few people gasped, then it turned into applause. My mom, of course, looked like she was about to burst into tears of relief. But Frank wasn't finished. "The mayor," he said, "is throwing me a little thank you, a grand send-off. And it's going to be on the 20th anniversary of the Metro Bank siege." The whole family, all his cop buddies, they all cheered. They knew the story by heart. It was Frank's origin story. He launched right into it, his voice dropping into that dramatic cop voice he used for reporters. "20 years ago," he said, "I walked into that bank, alone. 3 gunmen, 30 hostages, and I—" He paused, looking around, making sure he had everyone's attention. And that's when his eyes landed on Noah, who was sitting quietly by the edge of the patio, just watching. Frank's smile got tight. "I know some men. They would have run. They would have called for backup and waited. But you can't wait when lives are on the line. Some men run and some men stand. It's in the blood." He stared right at Noah, that word run just hanging in the humid air between them. It was a direct hit. He was calling my boyfriend a coward right in front of everyone. But Noah? He didn't flinch. He didn't look away. He didn't look angry. He didn't even look humiliated. He just stared back at my father. And his expression? It wasn't impressed. It wasn't sad. It was hungry. It was the look of a predator that had just seen its prey, and it chilled me to the bone. That hungry look, it unsettled me, but I pushed it down. I told myself I was imagining it, just like I always did. We fast forward a week, and the whole house is in a pre-party panic. My mom is a nervous wreck. The phone is ringing off the hook with RSVPs, and I'm just trying to stay out of the way. Noah came over to help, which really meant just keeping me company. I went to the kitchen to grab us some water, and when I came back, he was gone from the living room. I found him down the hall, in the one part of the house I always hated. My dad called it the Hall of Fame. We called it the ego wall. It was this long hallway, floor to ceiling, covered in Frank's life. Plaques, medals, framed photos with the mayor, even his old, decommissioned service weapon mounted in a glass box. It was a shrine to him, built by him. Noah was standing at the very end, perfectly still, his back to me. He was staring at the centerpiece, the crown jewel of my father's entire identity, a framed, yellowed newspaper clipping from the Dallas Morning News, 20 years old. The headline was huge: Frank's Valor, Lone Cop Saves 30. I saw Noah's hand, the one gripping his cane, clench so hard his knuckles turned white. His entire body was rigid, coiled, like a spring wound too tight. He was so lost in that clipping, he didn't even hear me walk up. I gently touched his arm, and he didn't just jump, he flinched. A violent, full-body recco. His eyes, when he turned to me, were hollow and cold and filled with a terrifying ancient rage. It was gone in a second, smoothed over, but I saw it. "You okay?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He blinked, forcing a small, tight smile. "Yeah," he muttered, looking back at the wall. "Fine, just chronic pain." I looked at his face, and then I looked at the picture of my smiling father in the newspaper. And my internal monologue, my nurse's gut, just said, he wasn't fine. He wasn't looking at a news clipping. He was looking at a ghost. That night, I couldn't sleep. That image of Noah's face, that cold, ancient anger, it was burned into my brain. I kept telling myself he was just in pain, that the barometric pressure was dropping, that it was anything but what it felt like. I was lying in bed around 2 a.m., staring at the ceiling when I heard it. Voices. Downstairs. My first thought was a home invasion, but I recognized the voices. It was Frank. And Noah. I slipped out of bed, my feet silent on the carpeted hallway. The house was dark, but the kitchen light was on, spilling a single, hard rectangle of light onto the hardwood floor. I stopped just before the light, pressing myself against the wall. The air was thick, heavy, like the static before a lightning strike. This was our version of the frozen table. Me, frozen in the hallway, listening to the two most important men in my life. And my father, he didn't sound like my father. His voice wasn't booming. It wasn't the hero chief. It was a low, venomous hiss. It was the voice of a cornered animal. "You have no right to be here," he whispered, but his whisper was full of pressure. "You get out of my house and you stay away from my daughter." The silence that followed was terrifying. It stretched on for what felt like a minute. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. Then Noah's voice. And it was so calm, deadly calm. That was the moment of restraint, the quiet power that made Frank's hissing seem weak. "I'm just here for Sarah," Noah said, his voice perfectly even. "Keep her name out of your mouth, and I'll keep yours out of mine. Don't make me a liar, Frank." My blood ran cold. My father, the hero of Dallas, was afraid of this quiet man with a cane. And I had the sickening, terrifying realization that I had no idea why. After that night, everything changed. I couldn't unhear that conversation. My nurse brain, it just kicked in. I stopped seeing them as dad and boyfriend and started seeing them as patients, as two men exhibiting severe, conflicting symptoms. And the whole city of Dallas seemed to be holding its breath with me. The weather turned oppressive, a classic Texas heat wave where the air gets so thick and humid you feel like you're breathing water. The sky was this sick, yellowish gray, and at night, you could see the heat lightning flickering silently on the horizon, like a war just out of view. The atmosphere in our house was exactly the same. Frank's symptoms were obvious. He was drinking. Not his usual party drinking, but dark, angry, secret drinking. I'd find a half-empty tumbler of whiskey on his workshop bench at 10 a.m. His temper, always a force, was now a hair trigger. He'd lash out at my mom for loading the dishwasher wrong, his voice like a crack of thunder. He was a man suffocating under immense pressure. But Noah's symptoms were quieter and 100 times more terrifying. He was having nightmares. I'd wake up to him, his whole body rigid, his hands fumbling in the dark for a weapon that wasn't there. And he'd be muttering. Not just muttering. He'd be shouting a name over and over, his voice strangled. "Ruiz, Ruiz, move. Get up, Ruiz." He'd jolt awake, covered in sweat, and when he saw me, his eyes would be wild, like he was looking right through me. I was a nurse, trained to see the patterns in the pain, And the pattern I saw was trauma. My father, the hero, was showing all the signs of a man terrified of being exposed. And Noah, he was showing all the signs of the man who was there when it happened. I had to know. I had to understand. Who was Ruiz? Ruiz. That name was a splinter in my mind. I couldn't get it out. The next day, I had a day off and I couldn't sit still. I went to my laptop and I did what I should have done weeks ago. I started digging. I typed in Metro Bank Siege 2004. The first 10 pages were a digital shrine to Frank. Hero Chief, Frank's valor, the lone wolf of Dallas. It was all the same story, the one I grew up with. But as I read it now, it felt different. I remembered sitting on his lap as a kid, him telling it to me like a bedtime story. And then your daddy, all alone, took out the bad men and saved the day. Now, reading it as an adult, I saw the holes. He was always alone. But why? Where was his partner? Where was the rest of the force? The story always skipped the details, jumping from I went in to I came out. It was a story I was trained not to question. I got frustrated. The official reports were sealed, redacted, blacked out. It was a perfect, polished lie. So I went to page 10. Page 15, I started typing in new things. Metro Bank Siege Truth. Metro Bank Siege Cover-Up. Metro Bank Siege Other Officers. And that's when I found it. It was an old, unarchived local Dallas news blog from 2004. The post itself was nothing, just a link to the official story. But in the comment section, buried under years of digital dust, was a single, anonymous post. It was dated the day after the siege. It said, Frank wasn't the only hero that day. He's a coward and a liar, and the whole department knows it. What happened to the other two rookies? What happened to Alvarez and Ruiz? I stopped breathing. My blood felt like it turned to ice. Ruiz, the name from Noah's nightmare. And Alvarez. I'd never heard that name. But I knew it. I knew it the way I knew my own. It was the name Noah never used. The name I'd only seen once on a piece of mail I'd grabbed by accident. His full, legal name, Noah Alvarez. I felt sick. Alvarez and Ruiz. These weren't just clues. They were names of real people. People Noah knew. People my father knew. The next day, Noah was at a physical therapy appointment, one of the long ones he hated. I did something I'm not proud of. I used the key he gave me and let myself into his apartment. I told myself I was just checking on his cat, but it was a lie. I was a woman possessed. I started tidying up, just tidying, but my hands were shaking. I was looking for something. Anything. I went into his closet, a small, dark walk-in. I was tidying up a stack of old sweaters on the top shelf when my fingers hit something hard. A box. It wasn't a shoebox. It was heavier. Wooden. I pulled it down, a cloud of dust making me cough. It was a simple, dark wood shadow box, the kind people use to display memorabilia. It was the unopened message, the physical proof. My heart was hammering in my chest. Don't open it, Sarah. Just put it back. This is his past. This is a violation of his trust. But it was a violation of my trust to lie to me. My fingers trembled as I turned the small latch on the side. I opened it, and the air left my lungs. It was a Dallas Police Department shadow box. My father had one just like it. But inside wasn't Frank. Inside was Noah. There was a Rookie of the Year plaque, gleaming brass engraved with the name Officer Noah Alvarez. There was a photo of a young, smiling Noah, no cane, no pain in his eyes, his arm slung over another young rookie labeled Ruiz. And there was another photo, a group photo. Noah, Ruiz, and standing next to them, looking thin and weak and nothing like the hero I knew, was a young, thin Frank. My boyfriend was a cop. My boyfriend knew my father 20 years ago. And every single person had been lying to me. I didn't put the box back. I couldn't. I left it on his coffee table, open. I sat on his couch in the dark, my heart a cold, hard knot in my stomach. I waited. When I heard his key in the lock, I didn't move. He walked in, sensed the room was wrong, and saw me. Then his eyes went to the coffee table, to the open shadow box. He didn't look surprised. He just looked tired. So tired. His shoulders slumped and he let out a breath he looked like he'd been holding for 20 years. He didn't even take his coat off, just leaned heavily on his cane. I finally spoke, and my voice sounded strange, thin. "Who is Noah Alvarez?" He flinched just slightly at the name. "And who?" I said, my voice cracking. "Is Ruiz?" He looked at me and his eyes were full of a grief so deep it was bottomless. He didn't speak. He just sat. He moved to the armchair opposite me and sat down, a heavy, painful movement. And then, the silence. It was the most awful, heavy silence I've ever experienced. It wasn't just a lack of noise, it was full. It was full of his pain, his nightmares, my father's lies. He just sat there, staring at the shadow box, his hand gripping the head of his cane. He was reliving it. I knew he was. He was back at the Metro Bank 20 years ago. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke. His voice was a low, raw whisper, and it was hollowed out by sorrow, not anger. "Ruiz," he said, his voice catching. "Mateo Ruiz. He was my partner, my best friend. And Frank. Frank was our rookie partner." He looked up at me, his eyes pleading for me to understand. "We all went in, Sarah. The three of us. The lone hero story. It was always a lie." I felt the tears welling up, but I held them back. "What happened, Noah? What happened in that bank?" He looked down at his hands, then back at me, and he gave me the reveal that shattered my world. "Frank, he didn't save us. He panicked, and he left us. He ran and he left us. He ran and he left us." Those words just hung in the air. They were impossible. My father didn't run. My father was the hero. But as I looked at Noah's face, I knew it was the truest thing anyone had ever told me. I was reeling, my nurse's brain trying to stitch the pieces together. "The limp," I whispered, my voice shaking. "Noah, your leg. The accident you said was on the job." His face, already so full of grief, hardened. "It was on the job, Sarah." "The gunman," I said. He cut me off, his voice flat. "No, not the gunman." I just stared at him, and the final, horrifying piece of the puzzle slid into place. "Oh, God," I whispered, my hand flying to my mouth. "Oh, my God, Noah. No." His eyes closed as if the memory was too bright, too painful to see. "He panicked," Noah said, his voice a low, gravelly whisper. He lost it. He started firing wildly at shadows, screaming. He wasn't aiming, he was just terrified. He looked at me, his eyes full of a 20-year-old horror. "He didn't just leave us, Sarah. He shot me. He shot me in the leg, shattered my femur, and then he ran. Ruiz was hit by the gunman. But I was hit by your father." I couldn't breathe. The man who taught me to ride a bike, the man who walked me into my first day of school, had shot his partner and then left him to die next to his other partner. "But why?" I choked out. "Why stay silent for 20 years? "He came to the hospital," Noah said, his voice laced with old venom. "He was the first one I saw when I woke up. He was crying, fat, crocodile tears. He called it a tragic friendly fire incident. The most paper-thin apology you've ever heard. He wasn't sorry he did it. He was sorry I'd lived. He said we had to stick together, that telling the truth would ruin the department." He didn't just buy my silence, Sarah. He buried me with it. He blackballed me. He made sure I could never be a cop again. He built his entire shining career on the grave of Mateo Ruiz and on the leg he took from me. He finally finished, and I was left alone in the wreckage of my entire childhood. The party, the big hero's send-off, was tomorrow. My dress, a pretty floral print sundress, was hanging on the back of my bedroom door. I could call in sick. I could get in my car and just drive. I could pretend I never found that box, never heard the truth. I could keep the peace just like my mother taught me. I walked over and touched the soft cotton of the dress. I thought of Frank's big, booming laugh. I thought of Noah, screaming Ruiz in his sleep. I thought of the fragile fella and the softy daughter. I let go of the dress. I was going to the party. Oh, I was definitely going. I had to see the lie. I had to see the hero. One last time. And so, we went. We drove to the party in silence. What do you say? What do you say to the man who just told you your entire childhood is a lie? And what do you say to the man who is that lie? When we pulled up, the party was already in full swing. The air was thick with that same mesquite smoke from 3 weeks ago, but now it just smelled like a grease fire. It smelled like a cover-up. The noise was deafening. Laughter, country music, Frank's voice booming over everyone. I felt Noah's hand find mine. "You don't have to be here, Sarah," he whispered. "We can go." I looked at his face, at the deep lines of pain that I finally understood. Then I looked at the house. My house. A shrine to a man who didn't exist. "Oh," I said, my voice feeling cold and steady in my own ears. "I'm not missing this for the world." We walked into the backyard, and it was just like the first time. But now it was like I had X-ray vision. Every laugh felt fake. Every slap on the back felt choreographed. And then, it happened. Just like in my nightmares. Frank, red-faced and beaming, took the small stage. He clinked his glass. The music died. He thanked the city. He thanked my mom. And then his eyes found me, and that big, fake hero smile spread across his face. "I gotta thank my daughter, Sarah," he boomed. The crowd made their polite aw sound. "She's got that soft heart, the kind I tried to toughen up, but it never took." The crowd laughed, that same stupid, knowing laugh. But this time was different. "I'm a trauma nurse," I thought, staring right at him. "I patch up the people you break. There's nothing soft about me. And I'm the only one in this yard who knows what you are." But I just clapped. I even smiled. "She just loves bringing home broken things." He laughed, and my stomach didn't drop this time. It filled with ice. His gaze shifted to Noah. "She's outdone herself this time. She even found this fragile fella." He gestured at Noah's cane. "Son, in my world, the weak get left behind. It's how the strong survive." The laughter. It was so loud this time. A wave of pure, repulsive noise. They were laughing at the man my father shot and left for dead. They were laughing at the hero and cheering for the coward. I looked at Frank, at his smug, grinning face, and I felt nothing but a cold, clean hatred. "Laugh while you can, Dad," I thought, my heart beating a slow, steady drum. "You have no idea what's coming." I wanted to stand up. I wanted to scream it. But I just sat there. I took it. I even nodded. I looked at Noah. His face was a blank mask staring at the ground. But I knew. He was just waiting. My father raised his glass for the final toast. "To strength," he yelled. And I thought, yes, to strength. "To strength," he yelled. And just as the crowd was about to yell it back, a new sound cut through the air. It wasn't loud. It was a slow, deliberate thud, and then another thud. I looked over. Noah was standing up. He wasn't just standing, he was walking. He was walking past the front row, past the confused faces of my aunts and uncles, and he was heading for the stage. Thud, thud, thud. His cane hit the grass steady as a heartbeat. Frank was still standing there, his glass held high, his smile frozen on his face, a mask of confusion. "Noah," my mom whispered, her voice like a tiny mouse. "What's he—" He didn't look at us. He didn't look at anyone. He just kept walking. He got to the low wooden steps of the stage. Thud. He put his hand on the railing. He pulled himself up. Thud. He was on the stage. He was standing right next to my father. The music had fizzled out. The laughter was dead. 150 people, completely silent, just staring. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Frank hissed, his voice low. But I heard it. The smile was gone. This was the voice from the kitchen. Noah didn't answer. He didn't yell. He didn't grab the mic. He just stood there for a second. And then, with that same slow, deliberate motion, he reached into the pocket of his slacks. My heart, it wasn't beating. It just stopped. He pulled his hand out, and he opened it. He placed a single, small, dark object on the wooden podium right next to my father's speech. It was a dog tag, old and tarnished on a broken chain. It made a sound. A small, sharp, metallic clink that in the dead silence of that backyard sounded as loud as a gunshot. I saw my father's eyes lock onto it, and I saw it. The hero of Dallas, the tough-as-nails chief, his face just crumbled. The blood drained from it. The color, the confidence, the arrogance, it all evaporated. He looked at the dog tag, then at Noah's face, and his mask didn't just crack. It shattered. He was terrified. He wasn't looking at a fragile fella. He was looking at a ghost. My father, Frank, looked like he'd seen a ghost. His face, just seconds ago so full of bluster, was a pale, sweaty mask of pure, white-hot terror. He knew that dog tag. He knew exactly what it meant. What is that?" Frank stammered, his voice no longer a boom but a thin, reedy squeak. "Get off my stage. Get off." Noah didn't look at him. He didn't even acknowledge him. He just reached with his one free hand and pulled the microphone stand toward him. The small screech of the metal bass on the wood cut through the silence. He adjusted the mic. He looked out at the crowd, at the mayor, at the other cops, at my mother, who looked like she was about to faint. And he spoke. His voice was quiet, but the microphone made it echo across every inch of that yard. "This," he said, tapping the dog tag that was still on the podium, "belonged to Officer Mateo Ruiz. He was my partner." Frank was babbling now. I don't know this man. He's crazy. He's obsessed." Noah just continued, his voice calm and steady. "And I am Officer Noah Alvarez. Frank. He was our partner, too." The collective gasp from the cops in the crowd was audible. They knew the names. Oh, God, they knew the names. "Frank told you that he was alone," Noah said, his eyes scanning the crowd. "He lied. The three of us went into that bank. Not one, three. He told them everything. He told them about the first shots, about Ruiz going down, about the panic. He told them how Frank, the hero, had wept in a corner, screaming. He told them how Frank had started firing wildly, at shadows, at them. And he told them about the door. Ruiz was bleeding out," Noah's voice said, echoing over the silent, horrified crowd. "I was on the floor. My leg was shattered, and Frank ran. He ran and he barricaded the steel security door from the outside. He locked us in. He left us to die." I could see my mother, her hands over her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. Frank was just shaking his head, muttering, "Lies, lies." "Your father," Noah said, his voice dropping but the microphone catching every single venomous word, just said that the weak get left behind, that it's how the strong survive. He looked right at Frank. Mateo Ruiz, my partner, he wasn't weak. He was just bleeding. And he was left behind. He was left behind by the weakest man I have ever known. He was left behind to die by you, Frank. The poetic irony was devastating. He had hung himself with his own words. The silence that followed. It wasn't just quiet. It was heavy. It was suffocating. It was the sound of 150 people realizing their hero, their legend, was a fraud, a coward, and a killer. The silence was so heavy I thought I was going to be sick. It was a vacuum. And into that vacuum, my father finally exploded. The terror on his face curdled into a dark purple rage. "Lies," he screamed, his voice cracking, spittle flying from his mouth. "He's lying. This cripple comes to my party, to my house, and you believe him? Over me? I am the chief of this city." He was puffing himself up, trying to find his authority, but it was gone. He was just a fat, sweaty, terrified man in an apron. He pointed a shaking finger at Noah. "He's a washed-up, dishonorably discharged nobody. It's my word against his." The crowd was frozen. Who do you believe? The legend? Or the man with the proof? Noah just shook his head. He hadn't moved. He was still holding the microphone, a statue of quiet power. "It's not your word against mine, Frank," he said, his voice still calm, but now it had an edge of finality. "It's your word against your own." He let go of the mic and reached into the other pocket of his slacks, and he pulled out a small digital audio recorder. "You see?" Noah said, holding it up for the crowd to see. "I kept the original radio recordings from that night, the ones the department lost, the ones where you can hear Mateo Ruiz begging for help, the ones where you can hear me screaming for you to unbarricade that door, the ones where you can hear yourself weeping like a child." That was it. That was the nail. The paper justice, the mayor who had been standing there with a look of pale political horror, just turned his back. He didn't say a word. He just turned and started walking. The other cops, the men who had idolized Frank, the witnesses to his entire career, they wouldn't even look at him. They looked at the ground. They looked at their wives. They looked away. They just turned their backs, one by one. And in that moment, my father, Frank, was utterly, completely, and totally alone. His eyes, they were wild now. He looked at the mayor, at his friends, at my mother. And finally, his eyes found me. His softy daughter. His last desperate hope. He had no one else left. His look. It was a silent, desperate call. "Help me, Sarah. You're my daughter. Help me." He was calling for me to save him, to do what my mother had always done, to smooth it over, to make it okay, to protect him. And I looked at him. I looked him dead in the eye. Him, the man who had shot my boyfriend and lied to my face for my entire life. And I turned away. I turned my back on him. I just turned. And I walked over to Noah. I didn't run. I didn't cry. I just walked, my feet steady on the grass, and I stood next to him. I put my hand on his back. That was my answer. I chose him. And that's when my father finally, truly broke. His rage, it was like a bomb going off. "You!" he screamed, his face a mask of purple, twisted hatred. He wasn't screaming at Noah. He was screaming at me. "You ungrateful, you bitch." He lunged. He didn't lunge at Noah. He lunged at me, but he never made it. Two of his own officers, two men I'd known my whole life. They grabbed him. They grabbed his arms, and for the first time, my father was in a hold he couldn't break. He was a wild animal, struggling, screaming, "Get off me, I'm your chief." And one of the officers, a man named Henderson, his face just carved from stone, said, "Frank, you're under arrest for assault." The poetic irony, it was staggering. My father, the hero, a man who built his life on a lie about courage, was just arrested for trying to attack his own daughter at his own retirement party, in front of the entire city. He was the one who was broken. He was the one being left behind. I didn't watch them put him in the car. I didn't watch my mother collapse onto the lawn, her inherited silence finally breaking into a terrible wailing sob. I just turned. And Noah, his hand on my back, walked me out of that yard, his cane thudding on the pavement as we left my entire life burning behind us. Months passed. The trial was a media circus. The family was gone. The for sale sign on my childhood home went up a week later. Now it's just quiet. We live in a new apartment across town. It's smaller, but the sunlight that comes through the big front window every morning feels clean. I'm unpacking the last of the boxes. I find a small framed photo of me and Frank, me on his shoulders at a 4th of July parade, the hero and his softie. I look at it for a long time. I don't rip it. I don't break it. I put it in the bottom of a cardboard box right next to my old high school yearbooks, and I tape the box shut. I go into the bathroom to wash the dust off my hands, and I catch my reflection in the mirror. For 20 years, I'd looked in the mirror and seen the chief's daughter, a girl who had to be quiet, had to be perfect, had to keep the peace. Now, I just see Sarah. I see a woman who survived. I see a nurse. I see a person who, for the first time in her life, is free. Silence isn't strength. My mother taught me that, and she was wrong. Truth is strength, even when it costs you everything. I lost my parents. I lost my home, but I regained my soul. Was the price too high? Tell me in the comments. I really need to know. If you believe that the truth always wins, and that the villains, no matter how powerful, eventually get what they deserve, subscribe to the channel. We have more stories to tell.